Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in this great big blue world we call the Earth. My name is Eric Anthony. I'm with SolarWinds MSP, and today we are presenting a webinar on management for Mac, an overview and a demo. And this is going to go into some of the new features that we've recently added to the Mac agent, as well as remind you about some features that we've added over the last couple of years. This is just the typical legal disclaimer saying that if we talk about anything that might happen in the future releases of the product, especially the Mac agent, since that's what we're talking about today, that those things may not happen based on schedules, based on changes in strategy, things like that. Legal department requires us to have this. Like I said, my name is Eric Anthony. I am the principal of customer experience here at SolarWinds MSP. And basically, my job is to make sure that you guys, when you come on as customers, have the best experience possible. As a big company, it's hard to get kind of personal sometimes. So I make sure that I'm out there in social media, doing these webinars, accessible by email, all of those things, so that you guys have somebody you can reach out to above and beyond your regular account management team. The only thing that people typically care about is the fact that I was a break fix and MSP owner for a little over 16 years. Those were actually two companies. I had a break fix company way back a long time ago, did a couple of other things, and then started my own MSP. And then obviously came on board here. It's been about 5.5 years now. Came up through being a sales engineer manager, and now I get to talk to you guys on a regular basis, which is really a lot of fun. Just a few housekeeping things to get started. All of you are on mute. That's not because we don't want to hear from you. It's just simply because webinars tend to work better that way. If you have a question, we do encourage you to ask questions. Go ahead and put those in the chat window so that we can hopefully get around to answering those. Ask your questions at any time as we're going along. If there's something super relevant to what we're talking about that right then, we may go ahead and cover that question right then and there. And of course, let us know as soon as possible if you have any audio and video issues. There are some things that we can sometimes do on the back end here that can help resolve those for you. So please let us know in the chat window or in the questions window if that is occurring for you. And then yes, the question that is always asked, is this session being recorded? It absolutely is. And that will be available at some point once the marketing team gets to cleaning it up and all of those things. Okay, the agenda today is we're going to spend about 20 minutes talking about why you should do Mac support in your MSP, why it makes your MSP different, and how it separates you from the crowd of MSPs who are not doing Mac support. And then we're going to spend about 10 minutes actually digging into the product and showing you some of the new features that are available for supporting the Mac. And with that, I'm going to introduce Brian Best, who is our Apple strategist here at SolarWinds MSP and primarily responsible for all of the updates to the Mac agent. Take it away, Brian.
Hey y'all. Yeah, like you, Eric, I've also am an MSP veteran. I actually still own my Apple-centric MSP. We're a little bit bizarre in that we only do Macs. We have a handful of Windows PCs, so it's a little backwards if you follow the comic book reference there. Yeah, so it's in addition to being a senior product manager here at SolarWinds MSP in charge of all the Mac stuff. So happy to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being here. All right, so I would be remiss if I did not plug the SolarWinds MSP Institute. This is basically a learning center for MSPs to learn both about the technical aspects of our product as well as the business aspects of running an MSP. There's a lot of great content here. Obviously, some of it is gated for customers, but there's a lot of great content in there that is not gated and available to everyone, even if you're not a customer. So I encourage you to check that out. You can reach that through our website, which is www.solarwindsmsp.com.
All right, well, what do you say we jump in here and get into some content that everybody came for, yeah?
Absolutely.
All right. So, friends, there's no denying that Apple has been growing, and that includes the Mac. Obviously, Apple went from an also-ran in the mid-90s to one of the largest technology companies in the world. You could say, hey, that's primarily iOS, iPad, iPhone, etc. But you got to realize this also includes the Mac as part of that. That operating system, that computer is not going anywhere, especially after last week's announcements from Apple. Now, most places have the market share of macOS pegged around 10% worldwide. Different stats vary. Some places have it higher, like for example, in the United States, it's around 18%. And in some market segments, like web developers, for example, it's as high as 30%. Now, I should acknowledge this is the source of all human truth, Wikipedia. But we're hearing this from reputable sources as well. TechCrunch, Motley Fool, they've been talking about this for years now. Probably my favorite stat on this actually came from ZDNet, and they said that Apple sold $25 billion worth of Macs every year. So if Apple spun off the Mac, and forget iOS, forget iPad, iPhone, you just talk about the Mac, Apple spun that off to its own business, that would be bigger than all of McDonald's. So yeah, the Mac is bigger than the Big Mac. So forget Big Macs for a second. That's big opportunity. That's a big deal. So how does that help you as the MSP? Well, think about it like this. If the Mac represented 15% of the market, it should represent at least 15% of your market also. So say you're a $200,000 a year MSP. 15% would be like adding 30K a year or $2,500 a month to your top line revenues. If you're a $1 million a year MSP, then it's like adding 150K. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. Imagine an extra 15% going down to your bottom line. I mean, I don't think any of us would turn our nose at that and that opportunity. But when you start talking about Mac support, one of the things you start thinking to yourself is, well, wait a second, this is kind of different, kind of scary. But here's the secret, guys. You already know how to do it, because a computer is a computer, right? And the Mac is just another computer. So your basic theory of operation is the same. Your interfaces are the same. All this stuff. Yeah, there's some nuance, but the problem is the nuance tends to, the weird things about it tend to freak you out a little bit. I'll give you an example. I had a conversation not too long ago with a Windows first technician, a super sharp guy, very respected in our industry. But he was talking to me, he reached out to me because he had a problem with a MacBook Pro. Seems that the hard drive in the MacBook Pro had died and he was replacing it with an SSD. But the SSD upgrade wasn't going right. He tries to install it, it doesn't work. And he's calling me, he's like, is this SSD Mac compatible? That was kind of the question. It's like, well, wait, SSD Mac compatible? It's SATA, right? I mean, it's SATA is SATA. And the drivers, where the software difference is usually the big thing, the drivers for mass storage are built in the operating system. So there really isn't a Mac compatible associated with this. It turned out, this is kind of what we as troubleshooters do, right? We go to what's weird, what's different in an environment when we're trying to troubleshoot. So, he would take this SSD he was trying to get to work in the Mac. It wouldn't work. He'd put it in a PC in his shop and it worked just fine. It mounts, he could format it, etc. Puts it back in the Mac, still doesn't go. Well, it turns out that he was getting hung up on this Mac compatibility piece when in reality, it was just a bad SATA cable. Now, ignore for the moment that was actually a fairly common malady on certain Mac laptops. But you don't even need to know that. Basic hardware troubleshooting gets you there, right? I mean, when you look at, forget the fact that it's a Mac for a minute, just look at a hard drive in any PC, all right? You got the logic board, the motherboard controller, you got the cable, and you got the drive. Well, the drive is a known good. You plugged it into another device and it works just fine. What's left? And eventually you'd end up here with basic hardware troubleshooting. You just got to get past the weird Mac part. And that's what he did, and now he got it done. He's got a happy customer. In reality, if he had taken that initial hard drive that thought was bad and plugged it into another Mac, it probably would have mounted and all the data would have been there and everything was fine. I don't remember if they did that or not, but the drive was probably not bad at all. It was just this. So at least I got an SSD upgrade out of the deal, right? But I think that's something we do as troubleshooters. We try to find stuff that's kind of weird for our environment, and that's different and kind of gives us pause. And it's easy for us to lump the Mac in there. But if we remember that it's just another computer and we treat it like that, you can get pretty far in this. The other nuanced piece is going to be the software piece. I actually liken this to, if you're in the United States, I liken this to driving in England or Australia, and if you're in one of those places, the reverse. It's like driving to the US. Just, you already know how. It's just all the buttons are in different places, but the fundamentals are the same, right? Your files, directories, shortcuts, processes, service, scripts, backup, malware. I mean, it's all the same stuff. Yeah, there's nuance, but you can totally handle that. Yeah, like I said, it's just the same stuff. You're just steering wheels on the other side of the car. So if you're picking that up, then maybe you're thinking, okay, well, hey, this is something we know how to do. Now, what I'm not suggesting is that you go right out and you start selling to all Mac environments or primarily Mac environments. My recommendation would actually be that you start small. You probably have a tiny island of Macs at your existing clients. Okay. And at this point, you've either ignored those or you've seeded those out to a Mac centric vendor, or maybe you took them on, but you're maybe not delivering the quality of support that you would want to deliver to any other computer that's on that network. So let's talk about what you need. Well, you need pretty much the same thing as all your clients, right? The Mac runs Flash, it runs Java, it has security updates from Apple for the operating system in addition to the third-party updates. So it needs patching. You absolutely got to patch all that stuff. If you are, if there's a new Flash vulnerability that comes out, and I don't know, has it happened? It's only been a couple days. I think there was one that came out last night. I don't know if it's a security vulnerability or not. But in any case, yeah, so Flash, if you can't just uninstall it, but that's another story for another day, you got to keep it updated. You do it on all your PCs, presumably with patch management. Your Macs are going to need that too. If you ignore them, they're running the old Flash, the vulnerability is still there. That creates a potential backdoor in the network. You could say the same thing on Java and the rest. So patches is hugely important. Cybersecurity. These days, cybersecurity is obviously a huge thing. Hopefully, you're already using cybersecurity to differentiate yourself and put your business forward. Macs get malware. I know. I was shocked too. Apple's been lying to me this whole time. Yeah, Macs do get malware. In fact, it's definitely on the rise. We've seen it. Used to be we'd hear about a new piece of Mac malware maybe twice a year, once a quarter. Now it's like multiple times a month we're hearing about something new that's out there. This was not entirely surprising to anybody who understood this and didn't drink the Apple Kool-Aid. But yeah, absolutely, there is malware on the Mac. And more importantly for cybersecurity on the Mac is that social engineering is platform independent. The dialogue that I've got in the bottom right there, you're going to see that. It doesn't matter that you're on a Mac. They're leveraging it, but it's the exact same technique. It's get the user to call us at this 800 number, then trick them into installing something that gives us the ability to do what we really want to do on there. That's the whole thing, and it doesn't matter whether you're on a Mac or PC when you're taking that vector. To that end, if they get ransomware, you need backup. They need business class backup, especially cloud-based backup. And it's not really true backup unless the backup's being monitored. So if you're leveraging Time Machine that's built into the Mac operating system, it's built-in backup. The problem with Time Machine is twofold. One, it's not cloud-based, and trying to get Time Machine to become cloud-based is kind of a fool's errand. I've never seen a solution that actually works well with that, which means if the building burns down, all the Time Machine backups burn down too. The other problem is Time Machine generally needs to be monitored like any other backup does, because it's going to throw alerts like the ones you see on the screen here, and your users are going to be like, I don't know what that means. Close. Get out of my way. I'm trying to get my work done. Meanwhile, they think they got a backup, or you think they got a backup, and they don't. Okay, so it definitely needs to be monitored going forward. So then the question becomes, well, what if I don't want to? What if I don't want to do the Mac? Well, ignoring the fact that this isn't the mid 90s anymore, right? Ignore for the moment the revenue that you're simply turning away. I mean, the whole Mac versus PC thing and having to choose a side, it's archaic. All right. Now it's all about differentiating your MSP, and to borrow a phrase, whatever it takes. Right. That you got to grow your business. You got to do it in any way, shape you can. Especially with the MSP market becoming I don't want to say saturated, but maybe commoditized is probably the right word. The days of just simply installing a tool and saying you're an MSP are over. You got to differentiate yourself from the market, and this is a great way to do it. But let's talk about what happens if you don't, right? The risks of not supporting the Mac isn't just potential revenue, it's things like data loss, all right? If you're not backing up a Mac or that's on one of your clients' networks, and you're not monitoring that backup, you risk having some piece of data that gets lost that's important to the company, especially when a lot of the C-suite is using Mac for their devices, maybe even the person who writes your check. Um, Security incidents. We already talked about patching Flash and Java. So if you're not patching these, if you're not educating the Mac users in cybersecurity because you drank the Apple Kool-Aid, and you think that Macs don't get malware, then yeah, you risk that as well. And ultimately, you risk customer loss. If the Mac users don't feel like they're getting good enough support from you or any support from you, and they go somewhere else to get that support, you're basically inviting a competitor into the door. And I say this with experience, guys, because again, I still own my Apple-centric MSP. We have one particular client that is largely PC. They got about 50 or 60 Windows PCs, and they've got a guy who manages those. And they've got about a handful, 3 or 4 Macs that me and my team manage because the PC guy doesn't want to touch those. So I'm having a meeting with the owner of that business not too long ago, and we're just talking about various different things. And I happen to casually mention that we're rolling out Office 365 all over the place at all of our clients. And his eyes light up, and he's like, "What? Really? You guys do Office 365?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's just it's not a big deal anymore. It's not 365 works great on Mac, same as it does on Windows." He says, "Oh my God, we're still running an on-prem Exchange server down in the basement. It drives me nuts. I've been wanting to go to 365 for months, for years, and our IT guy just doesn't want to do it." So here I am, a Mac, Apple first IT provider who's only there to do those little handful of machines, and I'm being asked about the big picture infrastructure for the entire business. And he likes the way I'm doing it more than his PC vendor. So at that point, we were ripe to take that PC business away from the PC guy there because we're offering another viewpoint that he wouldn't have if that PC guy took care of those Macs. So that risk is definitely real and something y'all need to be thinking about. Okay. Bottom line summary here: supporting Mac is a huge opportunity and a differentiator for your business. Like I said, you already know how to do it, and quite frankly, you risk a lot by simply not doing it. So I think one of the big reasons people don't do it, besides the weirdness factor that we already talked about, is that they don't feel like they have the tools. Well, that's why we're here at SolarWinds and why I'm here specifically. Is to talk about the tools and to provide you the tools necessary to get this done and make it really easy on you to do it. So Eric, what do you think? Should we jump into a demo?
Well, yeah, demo is definitely where we want to go next. But while we're transitioning to that, I do have a couple of questions that would actually fit perfectly in here because it does talk about the feature set that we're going to dive into. So the first one is, do we support remote control from an iPhone to a PC, Mac, or Android?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, our Take Control product does have an app you can download on iOS that will let you. And actually, we have an RMM app as well that you can download on iOS. That you can pull up your list of machines, pick one, and then say, "Hey, I want to take control of this," and it'll switch over to the Take Control app in iOS and do it. Sorry, I don't have my iOS device set up for a demo right now. Might be able to real quick, but we can show it to you. But definitely, a sales engineer here at SolarWinds should be able to walk you through that. But yeah, I've done it personally. It works great.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. If you want to learn more about any of the SolarWinds product, and especially the Mac agent that we're talking about today, if you want to go ahead and type contact into the question box, And once we're done with the webinar, that will let us know that you want somebody from the account management team to reach out to you. So the next question is, do you support backup to local storage on top of the backup to the cloud?
In our standalone backup product, well, we do have that functionality on PC. That functionality isn't there for Mac yet, the local storage piece. At this point, it's only cloud-based.
Okay. And kind of an add-on question to that is, do we support time machine monitoring?
Yes, we do. And yeah, I can actually pull that up in the dashboard for y'all. Oh, of course, I'm logged out. Haha, logged out. That's nice, a little security piece while we're talking, right?
Because we've been talking too long.
Yeah, exactly. That's nice. It's safe. That's good. Okay. So yeah, let me come in here. So this is the RMM dashboard for everybody. As soon as it pulls it up for me, it's not a good demo unless something goes wrong. Here we go. So you can see right here on the dashboard, I've got my Windows and my Mac devices side by side. So I think that's probably the most important thing, is that you're not having to go to two places to manage your separate platforms, right? If you wanted to monitor Time Machine, yeah, you can come here to our checks. You can add a 24/7 or a daily safety, and it's under script checks. We have a Time Machine status check right here that you can add. And when you add it, you can tell it, hey, I want to be notified after X number of days without a backup. So, yep, we are monitoring Time Machine.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Any others before I continue?
So the only other one, and this is kind of a little bit of a different question, is what features are available through N-central, or is this RMM only?
Right now, we're way ahead on RMM. RMM had a head start as far as Mac support, but everything we're looking at here in RMM is something we want to bring over to N-central. N-central's Mac agent actually got some love earlier this year in version 12.1, in that we had to really kind of tear it down and, excuse me, we had to tear it down and build it back up. We really had to redo it. There were some issues with code signing we had to get through, and we had to do some work to make it compatible with macOS 10.14 Mojave. That work is done, so that sets the stage for future improvements in N-central. N-central's release cycle is a little slower than RMM's, so it's taking a little longer to get stuff out there. And I think generally people are a little more cautious with on-prem solutions, and largely N-central is an on-prem service, where it's a little harder for us to call something back or make a change if something happens with something we push out. RMM being cloud-based, it's a little easier for us to go a little quicker on there. So RMM definitely has a head start on all of these things compared to N-central, but don't sleep on N-central. It's definitely coming. It's something we're working towards. But you can use, and you can use RMM as proof that I'm not just giving you lip service right now. This is definitely something we are going to do. Real artists ship, to borrow a phrase, and we are definitely shipping these improvements in RMM, so it's really just a matter of time before they get over to N-central as well.
Okay, great.
Okay. So I'm not going to take up too much time with the demo. We only got about 5 minutes left or so. And I want to make sure if you do have further questions, we have a chance to answer those. Probably the first thing I'd tell you is, if you get into the RMM dashboard, besides the Mac and the PC sitting here right next to each other where you'd expect to see them with the exact same UI. So like you click on these, on a Windows box, I got checks, I got tasks. On a Mac, I've got checks, I've got tasks. All of the tasks, we have a number of tasks that are predefined here, including our managed patch task, which will perform patching on over 200 third-party titles, in addition to the Mac stuff like the Mac security patches, the OS, iTunes, Safari, etc. And we do the testing and approval process for you as part of this function. So you don't have to worry about getting a bad patch installed or having to figure out which patches you should or should not. We're handling that for you as part of that task. And then, of course, you can obviously add your own custom tasks and checks workflow here in the script manager. You can create one that would be a check to find a bad file, and then have it trigger a task that would get rid of said bad file, for example. Probably the place you want to get started, though, is just download the agent. So once you get a trial of RMM, come up here to the agent. You can download the Mac agent. We also support our site installation package feature for Mac, which is great because then you can designate the client and the site that you want the Mac agent to enroll in, and it becomes a one-step deal. The credentials to perform the enrollment are hashed and in a text file that's right there with the installer. So it's safe to provide that installer to maybe a lower tech, or maybe even a freelance saucy. You could send it to a client and ask them to install it. Yeah. But that capability is there, and you don't have to provide your dashboard credentials to make that happen. Okay, and then the Mac shows up in here. You can turn on our cloud-based backup documents feature, and you can turn on our managed antivirus. This is our latest addition to this as well. And in the short time we got left, I want to show you the antivirus piece, because this is the thing I think I'm most proud of. It's our most recent entry, because the antivirus piece functions exactly the same as Windows does. This is one of our major goals for the Mac agent. Just like the Mac is I spent a lot of the webinar telling you that you don't have to learn anything new. You already know how to do it. Same thing should apply here. We don't want you to have to learn anything new. So there's no separate managed antivirus for Mac. There is no separate protection policy for Mac. It's the same policies for desktops, laptops. And there's just certain things that aren't going to be Mac compatible. We list those in here, but you don't have to create a separate profile just for Mac. It will use the same profile. Even if Mac and Windows exist in the same client and site, you can apply the same profile to that client and site and affect both Mac and Windows in there. And the really nice thing is the engine works really, really quickly. So if I go to I'm waiting, talking too long on this one too. So if I come here to a demo Mac, the threat vector on Mac with malware these days is usually a Trojan base. They're trying to trick a user into downloading and installing something. So if I were to open this up and I'm a user, and I downloaded a piece of Mac malware and I wasn't really thinking too hard about it, no sooner do I unzip the thing and I go to double click on it and install it, and within moments, the antivirus goes and gets rid of it and trashes it. And voila, the thing is gone. VM's being a little slow today, but it deleted it probably before I'd even get the darn thing installed, before I'd go into my downloads and go get it. It's trashed, and that shows up here in your dashboard that you got rid of it. So then you can have a conversation with that user about their cybersecurity. So if you haven't tried it, definitely download the Mac agent, sign up for a trial RMM, download the Mac agent with the site installation package, enable the cloud-based backup, antivirus, the manage patch task, and you're off to the races with some really great Mac support foundations.
All right, Brian. So I have two questions specifically about the antivirus real quick while we have a couple of minutes left.
Yep.
What antivirus engine is it?
It's Bitdefender.
All right. And what about ransomware?
If there is a ransomware variant that is native to Mac, I got to tell you, I've thrown every modern piece of malware that I can find, some of the latest pieces of malware that are out there for Mac. I know where to get them, and I threw them all at this, and it found them and got rid of them, just like I showed you in the demo. So I'm pretty confident you can stay safe there. Obviously, a cloud-based backup will be a good defense for that as well.
Okay, great. Does it support a remote command line interface?
As it stands right now, we got the take control function, which will give you a screen sharing based one. What you're looking for is remote background. Now, when you right click on a Mac, you see there's some things that don't light up the same way they might light up for Windows. Remote background is one of them. But stay tuned. Keep an eye on us here in the next, I can't promise timelines, but soon. Okay, so just keep an eye on it. Yeah, because it's coming real fast.
Yeah, and also speaking of timelines, somebody's asking, when is this going to be available on N-Central? And you kind of already covered that in terms of,
yep.
We're bringing it to N-Central. We just can't commit to timelines.
Yeah, that goes back to the legalese in the early part of the slide deck. I can't promise timeframes.
That's right. All right, so we've come up at the end of our time. Like Brian pointed out, you can go ahead and try the new agent simply by signing up for a trial of RMM and then playing around with the new Mac agent and, of course, the Windows agent as well. If you need a little bit more detail before you pull the trigger on that trial, go ahead and type contact into the question panel, and we'll go ahead and get somebody in touch with you as quickly as possible. We do have one last question that says, so with MAV Bitdefender, both Macs and Windows are protected.
Yes.
So yes, we use the same Bitdefender for, obviously one is Mac and one is for Windows, but other than that, they are the same Bitdefender engine, so they would be protected in the same way. And like Brian was talking about, it's also the same policies. So however you configure your Windows PCs is the same policy that's going to be pulled down to your Mac, so the same exclusions and things like that would apply.
Exactly.
Let's see, I got to quit pretty soon because I know we have another webinar coming up. Check external volumes. I'm assuming that means with Bitdefender.
Yeah, it does that.
Okay.
Yep, that's supported in the Mac version. In fact, when you go into the MAV policy protection settings, we make it very clear which ones don't work for Mac and which ones do. And usually that's a limitation in the Bitdefender engine for Mac that's preventing that. But again, the policy can be set, and eventually, when Bitdefender adds new features, new functionality, and brings some of that back, that stuff will start working, and it will operate according to the policy that you've already set for Windows.
All right, and then the final question I have is sometimes black screens appear using remote control. I would suggest opening up a support ticket for that. Because that's not expected behavior, obviously. Okay, so we have to go because there is another webinar coming up shortly that we have to get out of the room for. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for taking time from your day to learn a little bit more about why you should support Mac. And thank you, Brian, for being here.
No, thank you guys. Thanks for the time, everybody. And yeah, good luck. And let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks. You guys have a great day.
You too. Bye.